Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today, the top 10 reasons the real Captain Morgan was a total badass. If you were old enough to drink, you most likely have seen the image of Captain Morgan on bottles of rum in your local shops. You probably assumed that this was a made-up character for their brand, kind of like Ronald McDonald or Tony the Tiger. In reality, this image is actually based on Sir Henry Morgan, who sailed the Caribbean in the 17th century. And in the video today, well, why he was a badass. Number 10. He was a privateer. Most people think that Henry Morgan was a pirate, but he was technically a privateer, also known as a buccaneer. This means he was sort of like a freelance pirate, but it was perfectly legal. In many ways, this was so much better than being an actual pirate because instead of attacking boats at random, privateers were given a specific mission to accomplish, and they were almost guaranteed to get paid for their efforts. Members of the English government sometimes hired privateers who were willing to assist the Royal Navy with their ships and their crew. Morgan was born into an aristocratic family in Wales. He grew up spending time in his grandfather's mansion called Tredegar House, and he became a pirate simply because he thought it was quite awesome. Morgan called himself a gentleman adventurer and trained with a mentor named Sir Christopher Mings, who taught him how to fight and gave him a strong code of ethics to follow. Number 9. He was part of a pirate fraternity. Morgan was part of a privateer fraternity consisting of 1,500 men and called the Brethren of the Coast. They mostly worked on commission, attacking the Spanish colonies in the Caribbean on behalf of the British government. They elected a captain for each new expedition based on that person's bravery, knowledge of sailing, and leadership skills. Each member of the Brethren got an employment contract, so their share of the treasure was already agreed beforehand. After working several missions, Morgan became captain at the age of 23. Each captain had their own code of conduct, and when Henry Morgan drew up his rules for his buccaneers, he paid each member of his crew 150 pieces of 8. In the 1600s, just one of these coins was worth roughly £50 or $66, which is $9,900 in today's money. Not bad for a single mission, you could say. If they lost a body part, they actually could get a huge bonus to make up for this missing limb. The prices ranged anywhere from an extra 100 coins for a missing eyeball to up to 600 for losing your right arm. Number 8. The Sack of Panama. During the Sack of Panama, Henry Morgan was hired by the English government to help win territory from Spain. The privateers marched through the dangerous jungle and the mountains to Panama City. The journey was far from easy, though. They ran out of food and water, and many of them died of tropical illnesses. Despite all of these setbacks, the crew kept pushing forward in hopes of winning a treasure in battle. When they reached Panama City, they engaged in an epic sword battle with the Spanish and scored 250,000 pieces of 8, which in today's value is more like $16.5 million. When he returned to Port Royal in Jamaica, he was met by a crowd of cheering people who were celebrating England's victory in Panama and, of course, the financial success that it would bring the city. People started to learn about the epic stories of Henry Morgan's bravery, and he got a fan base all over the world. Number 7. He sued the authors who lied about him. After he became famous, stories about him started circulating, and many of them made him out to be far more evil than he actually was. In one story, the author of Buccaneers of America, a doctor named Alexander Exel Mellon, claimed that he was with Henry Morgan the entire journey, and that when he attacked Panama City, he tied monks and nuns together like a human shield to protect himself from gunfire. In other versions of this story, he tortured prisoners and forced women to sleep with him. He also claimed that Morgan confided a secret with him that he was never actually from an aristocratic family at all, and that he sold himself as an indentured servant in order to get a free ride to the Caribbean. Mellon lied so many times Henry Morgan had to sue him for libel because it was ruining his reputation. The judge ordered him to publish a second edition that was more accurate. Number 6. He was arrested for doing his job. When he first showed up in Jamaica after winning England a massive amount of booty from the Spanish, everyone was celebrating his victory. However, just before he got back home, the English and the Spanish, they signed a peace treaty that made them allies, and therefore it was unlawful to attack the Spanish. Even though he was just following orders from the governor that he received before the peace treaty ever existed, the politicians needed someone to blame for the bad timing. Captain Morgan was arrested for being a pirate, even though he was hired by the governor to do the job of a privateer. He was excommunicated from Jamaica and sent to London to serve several years in jail. Number 5. He became friends with the king. When he got to London, the mix-up was all cleared up and he was set free without actually serving any jail time. At that point, nearly everyone had heard the story of Henry Morgan's brave victory in Panama, and no one faulted him for the bad timing. Even though he was sent to London for a crime he did not commit, this actually ended up being a pretty great thing for his career. Henry Morgan was so interesting and charming with all of his stories about his adventures on the open sea that he was invited to aristocratic parties and even became friends with King Charles II. He knighted him and he officially became Sir Henry Morgan. The king gave him a gift of a diamond-encrusted snuff box with his face on it and appointed him as the new governor of Jamaica. Since the times were changing, the king wanted the illegal pirates to be cleared out of the Caribbean waters, and he figured that there was no better man for the job than Sir Henry Morgan. Number 4. He became the governor of Jamaica. Revenge has possibly never been as sweet as when Henry Morgan got to return to Jamaica with an order from the king to take the job of the governor who had sent him off in handcuffs. He just organized missions from other privateers from the comfort of his huge estate on the island, and he was apparently very diplomatic, only making just enough arrests to keep the king happy and making sure even the illegal pirates found a way out of their life of crime. Morgan was so good at his job that Port Royal became the richest city in the Caribbean, and it was indeed a pirate's paradise. Morgan used his wealth to buy multiple large sugar plantations on the island. He spent most days drinking rum and enjoying the island. By the time he turned 30, he was married and he purchased an estate in Cardiff so that he and his family could enjoy living in stately homes in both Wales and Jamaica. He died when he was only 53 years old, but it's undeniable that he truly did live his short life to the fullest. Number 3. He had the most epic funeral ever. When Henry Morgan died, he was given an epic funeral in Port Royal, Jamaica. The city placed his body for viewing in the king's house. For one day only, pirates with bounties on their heads could show up in the city to pay their respects to Captain Morgan, because apparently it was just that important. All of the pirate and privateer ships were in the harbour and fired a 22-gun salute. By that point, the city was mostly inhabited by the privateers and the pirates he had helped make wealthy. Cannons were set off in his honor. Port Royal was considered to be one of the most sinful cities in the world. There was a party every night with prostitutes drinking and plenty of beer, and it was all thanks to Captain Morgan and his adventures. But 4 years after his death in 1692, a massive earthquake hit the city, and it was followed by a tsunami that killed 2,000 people. After that, another 3,000 died from their injuries. The land where Captain Morgan's body was buried crumbled, and his remains fell into the sea and were never recovered. The remains of the city are still beneath the ocean to this very day. Number 2. Almost no one knows what he actually looks like. In nearly every illustration of Henry Morgan, you will see a man with long, dark, curly hair and a moustache. The most famous picture of him came from the Buccaneers of America book, which was illustrated by someone who had never actually seen him face to face and was taking a guess on how he looked based on the stories about him. In this portrait, the man appears to be in his 30s with long, black, curly hair and a curly handlebar moustache. This is the image that people think of today because the illustration now appears on the Captain Morgan rum label. While this is the most famous picture of Morgan, it's not actually what he looked like. Keep in mind that when he was knighted in London, he was still in his 20s, and for this they painted a proper portrait. This is actually still on display today, and it shows that Henry Morgan was actually kind of a baby-faced pretty boy. While this made him incredibly popular with the ladies in London, his true portrait would not exactly strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Considering that Henry Morgan went so far as to take the author of the Buccaneers of America to court over misrepresenting his character, it's interesting that he did not protest the inaccurate portrait of himself in the book. Maybe he enjoyed having people think he looked a bit older and, well, a bit more like a pirate. Number 1. He was so cool, they put him on a bottle of rum. Hundreds of years after his death, people still remember the stories of Sir Henry Morgan and his Caribbean adventures. In 1944, the CEO of Seagram's bought a rum distillery in Jamaica and called it the Captain Morgan Rum Company. It only made sense to put such an iconic person on the bottle. They were one of the first companies to really create a strong flavor of golden spiced rum. Today, they make a couple of dozen different varieties of rum, and it's sold around the globe as one of the most successful alcohol brands in history. Hopefully, the real Captain Morgan would be proud. So I really hope you enjoyed that video, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos every day of the week. Also, I've got another channel, it's called Today I Found Out, and on that channel we have content very much like this, but we dive into one specific subject in more depth. You can check that out through the icon on the screen now. But if you're looking for something else to watch right now, why not check out another TopTenz video, or indeed a Today I Found Out video over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.